Given that a large number of the audience's investors are really interested in the data center business, it would be intriguing to hear your and the company's thoughts on the medium and long-term opportunity set. It's clear that your sector is paving the way for the next industrial revolution. What difficulties does the industry face? As we sit here today, tell us a little bit about your perspective on the data center market. These enormous data centers are extremely inefficient because they include air, which is a terrible electrical conductor. The goal is to densify that enormous data center, which we call a 50, 100, or 200 megawatt data center, into a significantly smaller data center. Upon viewing one of our server racks, you will notice that Nvidia server racks are really pricey. They may cost up to a couple of $1 million each, but they are capable of replacing thousands of nodes. The astounding thing is that replacing all of those and consolidating into a single rack is less expensive than simply replacing the cables that connect outdated general-purpose computer systems. Another advantage of densifying is that it allows for liquid cooling, which is advantageous for very tiny data centers, even though it is difficult to liquid cool extremely large ones. Therefore, the first thing we're doing is updating data centers, speeding them up, densifying them, and increasing their energy efficiency. You save energy, money, and a lot more efficiency. We'll only speed up that if we only concentrate on that for the next 10 years. Naturally, there is now a second dynamic. Because of the massive cost reductions brought about by Nvidia's accelerated computing, we have scaled computers by 1,000,000 times in the previous 10 years, as opposed to Moore's law, which is 100x. So, if your plane could move 1,000,000 times quicker, what would you do differently? In what way would you respond if people suddenly said, "Hey, listen, instead of trying to figure out what the features are, why don't we just utilize computers to develop software? Rather than attempting to decipher the algorithms, we will simply provide the computer with all of the data, including the predictive data, and allow it to determine the algorithm." Machine learning. That is generative. Because we did it so extensively and throughout so many data domains, computers are now able to comprehend not only how to process data, but also what that data means. Additionally, it is capable of translating data due to its simultaneous understanding of several modalities. You can thus proceed from English to pictures, pictures to English, English to proteins, and finally, chemicals to proteins. It can now perform all of this translation as it comprehended all of the material at once. Generative AI is the term for the process of turning big amounts of text into little amounts of text, small amounts of text into large amounts of text, and so on. This computing revolution is currently underway. The incredible thing is that this new software, known as generative AI, will speed up and create the first $1 trillion in data centers. This generative AI is a skill rather than only a tool. Thus, the intriguing aspect is this. For this reason, a new industry has emerged. This is because, if you look at the entire IT sector up to this point, we have been producing tools and devices that people use. We are going to develop skills that enhance people for the first time. Because of this, people believe AI will go beyond the trillions of dollars spent on it and data centers to the field of talents. What is a skill then? It takes expertise to be a digital chauffeur. An autonomous robot that works on a computerized assembly line. A chatbot for digital customer service, a computerized planner. In Nvidia's supply chain, we have digital employee services and a lot of service now in our businesses. Thus, we are currently experiencing a surge of artificial intelligence that essentially consists of all these digital humans. So take a step back and move about a bit. According to what you just said, there is undoubtedly a continuous discussion in the financial markets about whether or not there will be a sufficient return on investment as we develop this AI infrastructure. At this stage of the cycle, how would you rate the return on investment for customers? And if you go back in time and consider, say, PCs and cloud computing at comparable stages of their adoption cycles, how did the returns on investment appear then as now as we continue to grow? Sure, let's have a look. If you recall, virtualization was the big thing prior to cloud computing. Virtualization essentially stated, we could move workloads across the data center rather than directly assigning you will. So take a step back and move about a bit. According to what you just said, there is undoubtedly a continuous discussion in the financial markets about whether or not there will be a sufficient return on investment as we develop this AI infrastructure. At this stage of the cycle, how would you rate the return on investment for customers? And if you go back in time and consider, say, PCs and cloud computing at comparable stages of their adoption cycles, how did the returns on investment appear then as now as we continue to grow? Sure, let's have a look. If you recall, virtualization was the big thing prior to cloud computing. Virtualization essentially stated, we could move workloads across the data center rather than directly assigning them to a specific computer if we take all of the hardware we have in the data center and virtualize it into essentially a virtual data center. As a result, the data center's usage and inclination increased, and we witnessed a significant overnight decrease in data center costs of about 2 to 1, or 2.5 to 1, if you will. Virtualization. The second thing we claimed was that we immediately placed those virtual PCs in the cloud after virtualizing them. As a result, numerous apps from numerous companies could share a resource, not just one company. One further cut in expenses. Utilization increased once more. The basic dynamic that was taking place underneath, which is the end of Moore's law, was obscured by the events of the last 10 or 15 years. The end of transistor scaling was concealed by another 2x in cost reduction that we discovered. The CPU scaling was concealed. The utilization cost savings from each of these things were then abruptly obtained. We're leaving immediately. And for that reason, we are currently witnessing inflation in data centers and computing. Accelerated computing is hence the first development that is taking place. Therefore, you frequently take your data processing work and we have this tool called Spark. Spark is arguably the most popular data processing engine available today, if any of you use it. A 20 to 1 speedup is fairly uncommon when using Spark and accelerating it with Nvidia in the cloud. You will save $10, but you will have to pay for the Nvidia GPU, which enhances the CPU and raises the computing cost somewhat. Even though it might quadruple, you save 10 times as much money by cutting down on computation time by around 20 times. Yes, this type of return on investment for accelerated computing is also not uncommon. Therefore, I would advise everyone to expedite whatever they can. After you've accelerated it, use GPUs to run it. Thus, acceleration provides an immediate return on investment. Beyond that, the discussion of generative AI is currently in its initial wave of adoption, wherein cloud service providers and infrastructure players like us position the infrastructure in the cloud so that developers can use these devices to train, refine, guard, and so on. Additionally, the demand is so high that every $1 they spend with us results in $5 worth of rentals, so the return on that investment is outstanding. Everything is sold out, and that is taking place everywhere in the world. As a result, the demand for this is just astounding. Naturally, we are already familiar with some of the well-known programs, such as GitHub Copilot, OpenAI ChatGPT, and code generators that we utilize in our business. The increases in productivity are just astounding. You know, not a single software engineer in our organization today does not utilize code generators, whether they are the ones we create for QDA or USD, another language we use, Verilog, or C and C++. Code generation, you know. Therefore, I believe that the days of software engineers writing every line of code are long gone. The future is the notion that each of our software engineers would essentially have a digital engineer working alongside them around the clock. According to my perspective, Nvidia employs 32,000 people, but those 32,000 people are surrounded by, presumably, 100 times as many digital engineers. Yes, yes, yes. While maintaining the original structure and meaning, this version fixes the grammar.